Zohran Mamdani just bent the knee to Donald Trump. And to prove his fealty, Trump required Zohran to sit through a 30-minute long humiliation ritual press conference in the Oval Office, which has the entire internet talking. People are shocked and confused. How could Trump and Zohran be getting along so well? Well, in this video, I'm going to be breaking down why their facade of friendship isn't surprising or random, but actually a calculated, genius political maneuver by Donald Trump. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel, but let's start with my favorite clip from the press conference. Donald Trump patting Zohran like a good little boy and saying, "Go ahead, it's okay, you can call me a fascist."
We had a productive discussion, but just days ago you referred to President Trump as a despot who had betrayed the country. You said you'd be his worst nightmare and accused him of having a fascist agenda. Are you planning to retract any of these remarks in order to improve your relationship?
I think both President Trump and we are very clear about our positions and our views, and what I really appreciate about the president is that the meeting that we had focused not on places of disagreement, which there are many, and also focused on the shared purpose that we have in serving New Yorkers. And frankly, that is something that could transform the lives of the 8.5 million people who are currently struggling under a cost of living crisis, with 1 in 4 living in poverty. And the meeting came back again and again to what it could look like to lift those New Yorkers out of struggle and start to deliver them a city that they could do more than just struggle to afford it, but actually start to live in it.
And I've been called much worse than a despot, so it's not that insulting. Maybe I think he'll change his mind after we get to working together. Yes, please.
And I want to clarify your answer to Stephen Nelson. He asked about your comment calling the president a fascist, and your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes. Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
I showed you that first because that was essentially the theme of the entire press conference. Donald Trump belittling Zohran Mamdani, patting him like a little dog while also engaging in self-deprecating humor to show his humility, and forcing Zohran to admit to his radical left base how excited he is for his partnership with the president. But first, let's break down the most obvious part. Donald Trump does not need Zohran Mamdani for absolutely anything. Conversely, Zohran Mamdani needs Donald Trump for absolutely everything. Zohran promised his socialist utopia would be funded by 2 parts: increasing the income tax on anybody making more than $1 million per year, and increasing the corporate tax rate. 2 things the mayor of New York City has no ability to do. Only the governor of New York State. And the governor of New York State, Kathy Hochul, has already declared she will not be increasing taxes at all. That is a non-starter. So that's already a major blow to Zohran Mamdani before he even steps foot in office. And now Donald Trump controls federal funding to New York City. And Donald Trump can very easily and justifiably withhold federal dollars if he believes the person running New York City is a crazy socialist trying to overthrow America. So Zohran already can't provide all of the free things he promised because the governor won't raise taxes. And if the president decides to also withhold federal dollars, New York can't even operate in the way that it's functioning currently. So Zohran wisely swallowed his pride, flew to Washington, and realized he must kiss the ring. And Donald Trump used this opportunity to his full advantage. Zohran and President Trump represent antithetical ideologies. President Trump stands for America. Zohran Mamdani stands for the coalition of immigrants and angry leftists who hate America. Trump stands for capitalism. Zohran stands for socialism. But the one thing all Zohran Mamdani supporters have in common is they detest Donald Trump. And Zohran ran explicitly on being a mayor who would fight against Donald Trump, who would stand up to him. On the campaign trail, Zohran called Trump a fascist, a dictator, a demagogue, a despot, a dangerous existential threat to America. And Trump forced Zohran to betray his base by explaining to the entire world just how deeply the two would be working together and how excited he was to form a productive positive relationship with the man he just called a fascist. It's the same level of betrayal most Democrats felt after an entire campaign calling Donald Trump Hitler, only for Hitler to show up at the White House and Joe Biden is greeting him with open arms and smiling and having a blast. Listen to this clip from a New York City councilwoman who says Zohran Mamdani is going to have some answering to do to the Democrat socialists when he gets back to New York.
Trump played chess. Today was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I am in the city council. I work with DSA council members. And I will tell you this guy's got a lot of answering to do when he comes back to New York, because he's got the DSA Linda Saussure types that are going to hold his hands over the fire for taking a meeting with Trump, let alone come out of it buddy-buddy. I think Trump was brilliant. I think Mamdani actually, we need the president, cannot move forward without federal dollars. So he knows he's between a rock and a hard place. And this has always been the question about Zohran. How is he going to navigate this? How's he going to appease the DSA? Because that's who he is clearly. And they stand behind him 100%. He's going to have a hard time explaining this to them.
During the press conference, Zohran and Trump repeatedly said that they both want to see New York be successful. But all of Zohran's base is anti-American lunatics who want to see the American capitalist system burned to the ground. They don't actually care about the city doing well. They voted for him because he said he hated Trump, just like them. So not only is this meeting going to drive a huge wedge in Zohran's far-left base, but it drives a wedge in the Democrat Party at large. There was already a divide in the Democrat Party between the centrists like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, and the radical left like AOC and the Squad, Zohran Mamdani. And Trump's pseudo-endorsement of Zohran Mamdani saying, I like this guy, I hope he's a good mayor, I think he can do really good things, can lead to two different paths, both of which are bad for the Democrats. Number one, Trump's endorsement might force people to say, if Trump likes this socialism stuff, I think I'm going to go the opposite way, which means socialism won't spread in America. Boom, that's a great win for us. It also means the party will be forced to stick with their lukewarm, tepid leadership, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer type of Democrats. Or two, it's the nail in the coffin to the Hakeem Jeffries type Democrat, and the Democrat Party continues to lean further left, which solidifies that there'll be a permanent minority on the national level. Socialism will still take over far left hubs in America, but the ideology will inevitably fail, things will crash and burn, people's lives will get worse, and socialism as a viable form of government and economics will disappear once again. The Democrats have also made their platform about doing absolutely nothing productive, just opposing Trump, resisting Trump. But here you have far left Zohran Mamdani saying he's perfectly willing to work with Donald Trump. So now it puts the moderate Democrats on their heels once again and have to rethink their strategy and maybe also start adopting the idea of bipartisanship, which is good for the country. It means we won't have an entire segment of obstructionist Democrats. Here's Zohran Mamdani going from, we'll never let ICE in New York City to, okay, I guess we can cooperate with ICE.
We work with ICE then?
We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and most recently we're talking about a mother and her 2 children, how this has very little to do with what that is.
Mr. Mamdani,
What we did is we discussed crime. More than ICE per se, we discussed crime. And he doesn't want to see crime, and I don't want to see crime. And I have very little doubt that we're not going to get along on that issue. He wants to, and he said some things that were very interesting as to housing construction, and he wants to see houses go up. He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, etc. And you know, we actually people would be shocked, but I want to see the same thing.
So Donald Trump basically got the largest city in America to essentially drop its sanctuary status. Sanctuary policies meant that local police departments would not coordinate with ICE to turn over criminal illegal aliens for deportation. And that's caused ICE to have to go into neighborhoods to pick up these criminals like they did in Chicago, which not only caused huge problems for the local mayors, but gave Donald Trump a justifiable reason to send in the National Guard. And Zohran wisely wants to avoid all of that chaos. So he basically committed to dropping New York sanctuary policies and saying, we will work with ICE to cover 170 different crimes. That way, we don't have to worry about ICE on our streets and in our neighborhoods. So that's a huge win for the MAGA movement. But it's also a major problem for Zohran, who was elected by a coalition of anti-ICE immigrants and far-left Americans, vowing to not cooperate with ICE in the slightest, seeing them as a scourge, a Gestapo that has no place in America. And here he is, opening up the gates, letting them into the castle. Here they are discussing another area of agreement, building more housing supply in New York to lower the rents, which is a great thing for affordability in New York City, but a terrible, crushing blow to Zohran's socialist agenda. Take a look.
The president and I spoke about the importance of not only building more housing, but also making sure that regulation of housing is something that is manageable to actually get through and not the cause of yet another weight that we see in our city.
He wants to see no crime. He wants to see housing being built. He wants to see rents coming down, all things that I agree with. Now, we may disagree how we get there. The rent coming down, I think one of the things I really gleaned very much today, he'd like to see him come down, ideally, by building a lot of additional housing.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate way. He agrees with that, and so do I. But if I read the newspapers and the stories, I don't hear that, but I heard him say it today, and I think that's a very positive step. No, I don't expect. I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great.
So Zohran's socialist master plan is for the city of New York to own all the apartment buildings, artificially keep rents low, so therefore it's affordable. But not only is it economically unsustainable, it's economically ignorant. When buildings go on the market and the city wants to compete with private buyers to purchase it, the city can only offer so much, seeing as they want to charge rents that are 50% of what market rate rents are. So private buyers who will be charging market rent can afford to pay double whatever the city would offer on any building. So the only economically sound path to reducing rents is by increasing housing supply. Now, I'm a real estate investor, so I understand the complexity of building codes and permits and regulations and bureaucratic red tape. But New York City is a completely different beast, by far the most complicated real estate market in America, if not the world. So increasing housing supply under a socialist government-controlled agenda is logistically impossible. It can only be done by experienced private real estate developers familiar with New York City policy. So while Zohran may end up getting what he wants, a more affordable New York where rents are lower, it won't come at the hands of his socialist ideology. In fact, it will come at the hands of his opposing ideology, capitalism. Now, finally, and arguably the most idiotic ideological stance Zohran had was his defund the police belief. Zohran wanted to decriminalize things like prostitution, open drug use, basically eradicate most misdemeanors. But New York City is a real place, not Zohran's ideological fairy tale world. And the facts on the ground are showing that Zohran is going to have to do a 180 on that position as well, or else the city will soon descend into chaos. Take a look.
The data speaks for itself. Since October of last year, 3,668 officers have left the force. The NYPD's current headcount, 33,745, a stark contrast to 25 years ago, when the force had 40,285 officers in the city. I spoke with PBA President Patrick Hendry.
Police officers aren't getting their days off, their meals. They're getting forced to work overtime that they don't want to.
Hendry noted the shortage is even impacting and increasing 911 response times. With Zohran Mamdani headed to City Hall, the union says some some officers worry about the future of the NYPD.
Zohran comes from the liberal school of thought that all criminals are really just misunderstood people who need some help. So his brilliant plan was to replace a whole bunch of police officers with social workers. He wanted to send social workers to the most dangerous 911 calls, domestic violence disputes, and thought that sending a condescending, overly educated liberal woman with a clipboard was the best way to defuse the situation. The reason you send police to a domestic violence dispute is so whatever person is in a violent fit of rage sees the police show up at their door and realizes they need to calm down quickly or else the police will beat their ass and take them to jail. Sending a social worker to an extremely violent situation will only occur in the social worker also getting hurt and then having to call the police anyway. And because of Zohran's anti-police rhetoric during his campaign, so many NYPD officers have resigned and quit, leaving a massive shortfall of law enforcement in America's biggest city, all while Zohran Mamdani is encouraging people to use public transit more often. So he wants families to eagerly go ride the subway while he decriminalizes misdemeanors, refuses to lock up violent, mentally ill homeless people, and also give people no police force to protect them when things inevitably go wrong. The reason Donald Trump complimented Zohran Mamdani so often in that press conference is because he knew every time he said something nice about him, another dozen Zohran Mamdani supporters were ripping their hair out. So now Zohran is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Have a cordial, professional working relationship with Donald Trump that can lead to productive, positive benefits for the citizens of New York City, or listen to the demands of his radical Trump deranged base who see it as a personal insult that he's working with Donald Trump in any capacity. If he works with Donald Trump, he loses the base. If he follows what his base says, he loses Donald Trump and the federal dollars. And because the governor isn't approving any new tax increases, if he loses those federal dollars too, New York will fall apart and Donald Trump will be able to say, look, this is what happens when you go down the socialism route. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Turn on those notification bells so you never miss a video. And I will see you guys in the next one.